Now it's time to talk about history. And history to me is always interesting because, as you know it, if you're a history buff, you know that history repeats itself. And so now we have Dan Nelson. Dan owns The Ancestors Genealogy. He's our genealogist. He's our resident historian here at Live Your True Life Perspectives. Dan, great to have you on LYTL. How are you doing?
Doing great, Ashley. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So I'm interested in how you're connecting all the dots today because your stories, they really do transcend between time and place and through families and presidents and everything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of connections there, and we'll touch on some of them that probably will make us appreciate that sheltering in place is a lot less crazy than some of the times back then, what they were dealing with in the midst of the Civil War.
Well, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, well, we have the conclusion today. So we built this mystery up, as you said. But so anyways, this silver teapot, just to remind everybody, we know it went from Newcastle, England, to Independence Hall, to Oxford, Mississippi, and finally it resides today in Enid, Oklahoma. And it moved from the Thompson family to my Smither family. So we'll go back here in time, and it's 1864, and the Thompson home in Oxford, Mississippi, was torched by the Union Army. And so Kate Thompson and her daughter-in-law were still living in the house, and the daughter-in-law had just given birth, still confined to the bed. The Union soldiers carried the bed out and put it in the lawn. Fortunately, someone remembered that the baby was still in the house and made a dramatic rescue of the baby. I actually found the story written by the lady that rescued the baby. In her old age, she wrote this story up. Meanwhile, Jacob, he's up in Canada, Jacob Thompson, trying to arrange for peace with the wealthy Northerners. Failing that, he's supposed to disrupt Union operations, however he may be able to do it. And so he ends up trying to rescue Confederate prisoners that were housed on an island in Lake Erie. He'd actually commandeered a vessel to do that, but failed at that attempt. But he was linked to all sorts of plots, and you could find evidence from the papers back in the day that he was either a master saboteur or that he was just a misunderstood peace seeker. But on his way up to Canada, he actually was recognized in Portland, Maine, where he was waiting for a boat, and the Secretary of War was about to have him arrested when he heard of this. Well, President Lincoln, his buddy, Jacob Thompson's buddy, said, "No way, we're not doing that," said he can leave the country unmolested. Well, this, while it may have shown the connection between Lincoln and Jacob Thompson, it enraged the Secretary of War, and it's written that basically it was sort of the last straw, and that he put into place a conspiracy to remove Lincoln from the presidency. This was the Northern radicals that were doing this. Well, then it all changed because Lincoln was assassinated, and everything got even crazier. So they sort of pulled together a plot, the Secretary of War in Washington, where they charged Jefferson Davis and his commissioners in Canada, which includes Jacob, with planning the assassination. They got perjured testimony by using bribery, and there was a $100,000 reward offered for Jefferson Davis and $25,000 for our buddy Jacob Thompson. He was accused of treason and complicity in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So, not exactly a good place to be in the world at that point in time, since a lot of people wanted to quickly grab and hang anybody involved in that. So Jacob wanted to go to Washington, D.C., demand a trial, clear his name, but his friends wisely persuaded him not to do this. Meanwhile, Kate had heard that Jacob was dead, and then a message arrives from Canada, and she'd received a message from Jacob saying she needed to bring a receipt for the $200,000 that he'd invested in British stocks and make her way to Canada. So another descendant wrote about how she made it through the Union line. With forged papers, Kate started up the Mississippi by packet steamer. In Memphis, she was sent ashore with other passengers, and behind a screen with a lady attendant, she was stripped to the skin. When her corset, into which she had sewn the receipt, was handed to the inspecting guards, she told the joke. Well, it must have been a good joke because the soldiers tossed the garment back over the screen, and she was able to continue up the river. There was one more inspection point to be passed in Cairo, Illinois, and she was ready for this. Now, you have to remember back then, people's teeth didn't last as long as they do today, so she had actually had a partial upper plate made in Germany. So she took the receipt, turned it into a tiny wad of paper, and put it in the roof of her mouth, and then put the plate over it. And she was able to get through the lines of this receipt. She made it through the So she'd sort of become an iron magnolia, this Southern belle, by sneaking through the lines that way. So she got up there. They fled to Europe, and fortunately Jacob was cleared of the conspiracy charges. In 1869, they came back to America, and they moved to Memphis just to start over to begin a new life. Jacob Thompson got into some trouble a few more times, but basically did all right. And he was, when he passed away, they flew the flags at half-mast, much to the chagrin of many Northerners. So in conclusion, it would have been financially easy for Jacob Thompson to acquire the silver teapot with its Independence Hall claim to fame. It also makes sense the Thompsons would give the teapot to the Smither family, but would it be close enough to name a child after Kate Thompson?
That Jacob gets into some trouble, I'll tell you that.
He does. He was, of course, he had a lot of money, and when you got a lot of money, sometimes you dig yourself out of trouble a little easier.
Totally. It's a lot easier to get out of there, get out of jail free card, right? Literally.
That's right. He had his connections.
Well, looking forward to next week. Can you give us a quick snippet of what we're looking forward to?
Well, it'll be another good story. I'm sort of debating between a story about a gal named Herod or Herodias, who's quite an eventful life, and that's probably what I'll go with. I might save that for Mother's Day month of May, but that's where I'm leaning towards now.
Okay, well, I can't wait. I know you're going to have a story for us. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be a cast of characters, so looking forward to hearing from you next week, Dan. Have a great day.
You too. You guys can reach out to me at dansgenealogy.com.
Awesome.